A lot to get through. Mr. Martin Keown, a crunch clash this Sunday as Tottenham host Liverpool. I wonder, Martin, how much of a top four indicator might this end up being?
Without doubt. You look at the league table now and you think, well, okay, Tottenham third in the table and Liverpool, where are they? Sixth, Jim? Seventh? Really poor start to the season. I have written notes down on this, but I can't find them.
That's always handy.
Yeah, so you caught me on the hop. But no, I've been really kind of... it's been perturbing to see Liverpool concede goals in the way that they have. And you watched the game last week against Leeds, and it's almost as if time stood still when that goal was put in, and Somerville scoring that winning goal last week. And to lose at Forest, it's been really poor from Liverpool when you think the standards that they've set.
Of course. Well, Liverpool ninth at the moment, Tottenham third. There's 9 or 10 points between them. Wow.
10 points, I believe, yeah. So it is kind of like a massive game for Liverpool now to put right. They seem very good in Europe in midweek. I thought they were improved.
Yeah.
But they've got to start doing it in the games that matter, and this is one now that they've got to start to re-emerge, Jim, because I can't see them being champions, but they don't want to miss out on the top four. And if they don't start winning games like this, then they're in real trouble. That won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it begs the question, Simon. Liverpool, doing it in Europe but not domestically.
Yeah.
And I suppose even Klopp's puzzled by that.
Well, we've discussed it, haven't we? We discussed it earlier on in the week, and we spoke about, and I made this sort of ridiculous comment in the rounds, but it can't be ridiculous because it's manifesting itself in reality, that maybe the opposition in the Premier League is more compelling than the opposition in Europe. Because whilst you're beating teams that are supposed champions, albeit 90% of the teams that play in the Champions League aren't actually champions, but you're playing with top echelons of each league in Europe, and then you're getting beaten by teams in the Premier League that are far lower down the totem pole, taking 3 points out of Fulham, Everton, Brighton, and whoever else was amongst that mix, Nottingham Forest and Leeds.
Yeah.
So you look at those teams and say, well, what is it? Is it a state of mind? Is it a personnel issue that you're rotating for Europe and putting better players into the team for Europe? Is it simply that the team can't compete with the arges of what being in the Premier League is about, because the Premier League is a more competitive, feral league than perhaps the European competition is at this stage?
Last season, Liverpool were the best pressing team in Europe. They were the best in the Premier League. Now they rank 11th when it comes to pressing the ball. They are fallen a long way. Now, what we're seeing now is that suddenly the likes of Van Dijk and Gomez are having to defend on the edge of their own box. Whereas in the past, they were on the halfway line. It was whether they should drop, whether they should... That's not the issue now. It's about pressing the ball at the edge of the box. And they've been found wanting, Jim. I know that Diaz is out and Jota's out and Matip's out. They've had a whole range of injuries, and they've got youngsters in that midfield, but they're not able to get the energy around the ball that they had in the past. They were going for a treble last year. It was incredible the amount of games they played, and they've just, like, I wouldn't say they've fallen off a cliff.
Quadruple they were going for.
Quadruple, yeah. They've gone off a cliff a little bit. I believe that Jurgen Klopp is, my thoughts on him, outstanding manager. He will get it back. But there are question marks around Van Dijk. I thought Van Dijk was probably one of the greatest centre-halves we've ever seen, and I think that's in question right now because of some of the goals that...
As you say, Martin, you're convinced that Klopp will go some way towards righting the wrongs that we're witnessing at this time. Klopp was talking about the club's current situation during the week. Of course he was. He actually went into a fairly impassioned 6-minute answer on the subject. We pruned it down to a minute. Have a listen.
Now we can say it, obviously it was never a quick fix, and now it looks like it's not a quick fix, now it's proven. But we will not stop fighting. So it's not a question about, and I didn't read anything, but it probably will be, everything will be judged about me now as well, which is absolutely fine. But when people look at me, then they will say he looks tired or whatever, that's normal as well. I'm not. I cannot give that excuse. So much for me and stuff, it's not. So my job is not only being here in the moment when the sun is shining and somebody gives us a trophy. My job is as well here to be there when we have to go to a really rough period. So, and I will do that with all I have, or if possible, even more, 100%.
I mean, during the week when we heard some of that, Simon, you dismissed it as waffle.
Well, the original version was a lot longer, and so it became more distracted and less compelling in what he was saying, whereas I came out of it not really understanding exactly what he was attempting to say. That's why I think it was waffle. Not because I think Jurgen Klopp en masse is a waffling manager, because he's not. He's a very capable manager. I do hold him culpable. If Jurgen Klopp is able to be attributed with all the success of Liverpool and the wins that they've got in terms of how they've progressed, then he must also equally be responsible for the inability to have identified the challenges that Liverpool clearly have, which the challenges that Graeme Souness alludes to on a Monday, which is their midfield isn't good enough, can't do it, they're too old, the younger group of players are not experienced enough. There was always going to be a challenge. The greatest managers are able to refresh and to rebuild and to keep on producing winning teams and changing the direction and refreshing the dressing room. And I think Klopp has got to answer that accusation, but at the same time, I'll back him to do it because I think he will.
Okay.
Yeah, but he did say, didn't he, about recruitment in the summer? He did say, okay, I've challenged recruitment. They think it's enough. I said I would have liked more, but I always want more. And I want to push every department of the football club. So I think he knew going into the season there was going to be issues. I actually feel, though, that, Simon, if you were still a champ...
I've never heard him say that, and I have to say to you, I have to say to you, if Jurgen Klopp has not got the juice to push the board, to give him what he wants in order to be able to produce a winning team, then I don't know who has.
No, because I think he's a pragmatic man. He wants to work with...
He's a football manager.
The resources he has available.
But he's not doing it then, isn't he? Because he just qualified it by saying, I told him I want more. So he's put the flag up.
But he did say that.
He did say
that because at the time it was Scotty Parker had said something along those lines, and we actually referred to Jurgen Klopp at that point for saying the same thing. So what was the difference? That's why. So,
okay,
so you should have heard it.
I'd never heard him say it.
You've been on this programme enough.
I'd never heard him say it. And Graeme and I were talking about it as soon as we're specifically talking about it on the Monday.
I think
saying the same thing. Which
Martin says you should have heard it.
Yeah.
You're on the show enough.
Yeah, I agree with what if he actually said it, if it's not a figment of Martin's imagination, which a lot of things are, I would suggest that he hasn't said it, and I would suggest that if he had said it, he'd have got precisely what he wanted.
What were you saying there, Martin, if Simon was still an owner?
Well, if he was still an owner, I think it's just the sort of leadership that he'd want. So,
Absolutely.
the day after a really bad result, he's basically saying that I'm not just going to be the manager here in the good times, I'll be here in the bad times too. That's actually quite refreshing to hear that as a player. Let's calm it all down.
It might not, because he'll get fired if he doesn't rectify the bad times, will he?
Well, I don't think they're going to fire him anytime soon. I think
neither should they.
It's one of the all-time great managers.
But I also don't think it's a wonderful bonus that actually someone sticks in when there's adversity. We're all great when we're winning, aren't we? We're all great when it's going our way. There are too many people in football that don't want to stick around when there's adversity.
No, but what it does within the dressing room, there was any little voices that look around thinking the gaffer might be in trouble and leaving. Suddenly he puts that fire out immediately. So I think it's very clever that he talks about the supposed arguments that are around him. Oh, suddenly Jurgen's looking not well. He's looking like he's losing weight. He's just out working out in the gym, maybe. I don't know. But yes, he does look like he's a bit, I say gaunt looking, but he does look like he's struggling a little bit in that situation. But I think when he came out and addressed the press, I thought, when I heard you say it was babbling nonsense, I thought, actually, this is the complete opposite. And if you're going to judge a manager in that way, then you're going to get it wrong, Simon.
And I concede that point, which of course in discussion with you is a rarity, but the bottom line is I listened to what he had to say, I walked through it, and I came away, I'm always wanting to listen to Klopp, because he's one of these managers that you'll listen to and you'll either agree with him or you'll disagree with, but you always have a reaction to it. I came away from that conversation saying, I'm 6 minutes...
He told me he doesn't agree much with what you say.
And that's fine. But you know what? That's fine. I don't expect him to, because some of it's critical, and people in football can only agree with it when it's praise. But the point is this, is that I normally come away from listening to Jurgen Klopp with a definitive outlook on it. And what I came away from this is I'm none the wiser. What's the point of a conversation and listening to somebody like I do often with you, coming away none the wiser?
Well,
I've learnt less. How can I have learnt less?
He was telling us.
I know less than I started the conversation with.
But what I can tell you he said was it's not a quick fix. Okay, and there's work to be done, work in progress, and that's what will happen. And Liverpool will come back. Don't forget, just a few years ago, they lost 6 home games on the bounce.
They should be accountable, because ultimately, and again, Souness makes this point, and we keep querying it with him about the legs in the midfield, and I'd be interested to have your opinion on it, because he talks about the lack of legs in the midfield, which is causing the problems that Van Dijk and Gomez and Trent Alexander-Arnold are experiencing. He then talks about the younger players that aren't up to the standard and aren't up to experience, so they've completely undercooked it in the midfield. And I would suggest that is entirely Jurgen Klopp's fault, because it's one thing replacing Mane with an £85 million or £70 million forward that will become £85 million with add-ons, and another thing, ignoring the challenges in the middle of the park. And if you can't see them, then what are you doing being the manager? And I know that Graeme can see it now, and he never mentioned it at the beginning of the season, so he's in the same gap. But I can't see how Jurgen Klopp gets away with people not quite criticising him, because when you're losing games to Leeds, to Nottingham Forest back-to-back, you're drawing with Everton, you're drawing with Fulham, and you're drawing with whoever else we've got in there, Brighton, you need to be held to account.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.